I'm going to speak to you briefly about the impact of amendment of the Updf Act on the civil-military relationship in Uganda. Civil-military relations, or referred to as CMR, is an intricate interplay between a nation's military and the civilian society. Simple, clear as that. The Uganda People's Defense Forces that got a name from the Constituent Assembly and therefore the 1995 Constitution as amended was previously National Resistance Army. From its inception, it always has been, continues to be, and shall remain a people's army. It is rooted from the civilian population. From the time it was even that word that we don't want today, before the distinguished Minister of Foreign Affairs had the honor to command it. And I think it's even good that amongst us we have the Honorable Minister who commanded the mighty Updf. Please, a round of applause for him. So unlike other armies that were very important, that were like the Tsar Army, like the King's African Rifles, or whereby decree were decreed to be there. The Updf today came from the population, lives by the population, serves the population, defends the population, and they retire into the civilian population. So the relationship between Updf and the civilian population is like that of fish and water. If you take fish from water, it fails to live. Life stops there. You take Updf from the population, civilian population, it ceases to be the Updf that we know of today. I thought we needed to have that kind of background and introduction. 2005, a law was enacted, the Updf Act. I am not going to, because we are dealing with people who read, so you know about it. But recently, there was a need to have it amended. And the amendment brought forth the following that enhances civil-military relations. One, because when this mighty Updf retires, they go back to the civilian population. If they retire disgruntled, unhappy, impoverished, that has a negative effect on the civil-military relations. This Updf that supposed to protect the people, if their entitlements in the army are not well catered for, the population suffers. But let me talk about the retirement, because that's what I brought forward. Previously, the 2005 Act, and I am sure General Odong is a victim, I can't say beneficiary, is a victim of what I'm going to talk about. The retirement package of the Updf was previously pegged on the public service calculation. 1 times 500 times that. Now, that presupposes that one starts work at 20 or 21, retires at age 60. But in the army, it's different. You can enlist, you can get commissioned 5 days, even 5 days after commissioning, you get not killed, but damaged. You lose your leg and you are supposed to retire. So if you retire after 5 years, and retirement is calculated that you should have retired at 60, you actually lose. So majority of these people of UPDF were actually cheated. Why? Because the calculation of their retirement entitlements was pegged on the public service. The amendment has corrected that. They have their own calculations now. Let me give an example. The law says if you are 40 years and you are still a private, you should retire. Somebody was recruited at 20. He has worked for 20 years. He has retired. He's given his sleepless nights and days 20 good years and has retired. And he takes home nothing. So what this law says is that UPDF must have its own calculations because it is peculiar because of the circumstances that are very different from the ordinary public service. That we did. 2, especially on retirement, we acknowledge that serving in the UPDF, while it is a glorious service, it exposes you to death, it exposes you to injury, it exposes you to disability. So we put in the law a disability compensation. If you are disabled while on duty, government should compensate you. We went further to say a medical board within the defense itself that should gauge the degree of disability and compensate you accordingly. If, for example, like I have veterans in my constituency, Nyamshozi, those who lost legs, who lost limbs, and they are being wheeled. So you get compensation that is commensurate to your degree of disability. We also give a monthly allowance to the helper. Either your spouse or your son or somebody who wheels you, who bathes you, who combs your hair, who cuts your beards. You people, you need to go to Murende. That's when you appreciate that our sons and daughters who gave their life to the UPDF to defend this country, some are without 4 limbs. So what should we do? Because they died on duty. We put that clause for them. And having a medical board within the UPDF serves. But we also said such circumstances demands that your father, your mother, your wife and parent and children should also get medical care. Fortunately now, the UPDF has a national specialized referral hospital, but it also has other hospitals scattered around the country. And guess what? All civilians prefer going to military hospitals, for they know they are going to get treatment that they ordinarily would not get. Now, on that one, the civil-military relations is excellent. The other amendment, if I may recollect, on retirement, on packages, and of course then that affects pension. Long after I have left, you should task General Dong what his pension is. 4-star general retired. If he's free to give it off camera or on the camera, I am sure it's not good. It's only recently that we enhanced salary and therefore pension and other entitlements. This law caters for that. The previous one, there was a need to amend and cater for this, hence the amendment. Most of you distinguished participants of this conference, symposium, you have seen that the UPDF annually and now religiously recognizes Tarehe Sita. And they do all that almost 2 months in a region where they give back to the population that gave birth to them, that fed them, that provided intelligence, that gave them cover, and still feeds them. Through this, the civil-military relations have been enhanced, and I can say they are excellent. They build hospitals, they repair classrooms, they do small bridges, they treat people, they diagnose, they do whatever. And by the time they leave that region, the population is yearning to have them more, to continue with them. The UPDF actually has a directorate of civil-military relations. I don't know whether one of them is represented here. Is he? Okay, but they actually do. I think the immediate former is Brigadier General Rashande, who retired. I don't know who took over from him. But that augments the fact that the UPDF recognizes a relationship between them and the civilian population. For they know from the civilians they come, and from the civilians they end up. Now, that is as far as amendment of this law is concerned. Should I mention the two quote-unquote controversial clauses? Again, they have a significant effect on civil-military relations. My late father, and may his soul rest in peace, the late George KAJWENGYE, used to tell me, and I quote, in Runyankore, waba wahira omusoro noba notina kya roadblock. Because in their time, the UPC time, there were multiple and several roadblocks, but they would ask one thing, tikiti ya musolo. So for him, the man of God, he thought that is all they required. So he would say, so if you have paid your graduated tax, why are you bothered about the roadblocks? So what we put in this law is that there are equipment, dresses, emblems that are an exclusive, should they enjoy exclusive monopoly of the military. Those include, but not limited to, guns. Why? Because they can kill. Because we give them exclusivity to the military and we hold them accountable. So we said, if you are caught in cahoots, of course in the wrong side of the law, with a military officer, you have come and lured a military personnel from barracks fulani, you go and commit a crime together, you too deserves to be tried in the military court martial. Misuse of a gun when you are not entitled to be holding a gun. Of course, the questions are, what if somebody throws the gun in my car? Me, a civilian, Saverino Twinos, Sinje. Somebody maliciously throws a gun in my car, and I am therefore charged for that. While that is possible, our prosecution and our justice system is evidence-based. You are prosecuted, you deny, the onus is on the prosecution to put you there. If they prove it, if they don't prove it, assuming the first court of instance did not err in law or evidence, we provided a right to appeal in this law. Even if the offense is so grave that it attracts a death sentence, we said go to the Supreme Court, because our law demands that the death sentence can only be certified by the highest court of appeal, Supreme Court. We also read and understood the judgments in the Kawaziguruka case, and all judges advise that people who chair and preside over the General Court Martial should have a legal back, should be trained lawyers. We put that in the law. We also gave them a tenure. The amendment had proposed 3 years. Parliament said no, let's give them 5 years. At least somebody will know that for 5 years I am here, I will not be removed, I will not be redeployed. That gives him or her ability to act independently. So your General Court Martial, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as in the law that is yet to be assented to by His Excellency the President, caters for all that. Clothing. We ran into trouble because they said the fashion world prints out clothes that are similar to military uniform. But let me pose a question, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. These clothes are not given to us freely. Neither are they forced onto us. We have a choice. You go to the market, you go to the shop on the clothing line, and you choose the color and the pattern. So why would you go and buy, you know you are not a military personnel, so why would you go to a shop and buy clothing that looks exactly like military stores? Of course you will plead that you have freedom. Yes, you are free to do that. So if you are free to dress like military people, why shouldn't military people also be free to treat you likewise? Especially if you commit offenses disguisedly. But we went further. Parliament said, no, that's not enough. All military clothing must be branded. In doing that, we are also protecting the civilians. So the two controversial clauses too have limitations. So it's not true that we threw curtains open, that civilians, as if it's a normal, no. Our justice system is evidence-based. And distinguished lawyers are here, Saverino, Comrade Tavaro, and others. But the beauty with us, I am a lawyer too, the beauty with us is that we ordinarily disagree, but that's how we earn our living anyway. So when you see lawyers agree, no, you know there's a problem. Lawyers are supposed to disagree. In fact, for opposite sides. And each advocate argues like he has a whole day to himself or herself. He has to convince the presiding judge. You listen to one, if you don't listen to the other, you know it is done. I have made my case, I'm going. I know somebody else will also come here, especially if he's a lawyer, and convince you. That's why we have judges. Judges, on the other hand, are supposed to listen attentively to the two sides, guided by facts and the law, and sometimes logic, and make a judgment. Then these lawyers have a right to agree to the judgment or disagree. What happens if they disagree? They appeal against that judgment. That is our justice system. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good afternoon. God bless you.